Hi everyone, this is Ravi. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So this is our lesson 8 on test project automation tool. So in this lesson, I'm going to cover API automation and how do we perform end-to-end API testing in test project automation tool. So as you all know, I have already published 7 lessons covering different basic topics which includes web UI application automation, a basic data driven framework, and then how can we identify the element locators in test project automation tool, and all other concepts. I would suggest you guys to please do visit those videos before you watch this session. Please subscribe to the channel, click on bell icon. You'll receive notifications whenever I publish more videos on these concepts. Thank you. Okay, so following are the agenda items for today's session. I'm going to teach you how can we install RESTful API client from add-ons module within the test project automation tool. Okay. And also I'm going to teach you how can we add different actions to send HTTP or HTTPS requests using get, post, put and delete methods for REST services. And also I will teach you how can we capture the server response for any request, JSON request that you sent, right? And also I'm going to teach you how can we capture the response codes, okay? And also I'm going to teach you how can we extract multiple JSON paths and then store those multiple JSON paths in parameters. So what is JSON path? The JSON path is, so generally the JSON structure, you'll have a root elements and then child elements, right? So in JSON paths, by using JSON path, you can capture any root element or any child element that you want to validate. So you can extract any child element that you want to validate and then store it into parameters so that you can use those stored parameters against your expected results, or you can use them in your upcoming test cases, right? So while automating one test case, you can capture the output response and you can capture the elements and you can use those elements from the response in another test case. So I'm going to teach you that. And also I'm going to teach you how can we validate the JSON elements using parameters. Okay. So if you have, let's jump on to our system. Let me jump onto the system, show you all these concepts and techniques. How can we perform by using test project? How can we validate end-to-end API by using test project? Okay, so now let's practically do automation step by step by using test project. Okay, so before we start, I just want to show you what I'm going to automate. Okay, so this is one sample website where we have a different types of REST requests. Okay, in this first request is getting list of all users from the system. Okay, so here I want to automate. Whenever I send this request, I have to get a response of 200 and I have to get a response of all these users, right? As a response, all these users. Okay, and I want to capture the user details of my first record, not all the records, but I want to capture separately the user details of first record, and I want to capture the first name and last name and keep it stored. Okay, and now when I go to single user request, in the single user request I have to pass the ID. So if you see, my first user ID is 7. So if I pass the first user ID in the request, I should get the response of my ID 7, which is first name Michael and Lawson, right? So now, because in the first request, I'm storing my first name and last name. In the second request, when I send a single user request, I should get the same first name and last name which I captured in my previous request, right? In the previous request, output JSON will have the first name and last name. This output JSON, I'm going to store first name and last name and ID. I'm going to store in parameters, and I want to use these parameters to automate the second request. Okay. And also I'm going to create, so basically I want to create a user by using post method. I want to create this user, right? As soon as I create a user will be created with unique ID, right? Now I want to capture this unique ID so that I can use this unique ID to delete the user. So without capturing the unique ID, you cannot delete the user, right? So whenever I post a new user will have his new unique ID. Now from the response, I will capture this and I want to use this in the next test case to delete the record. So these are all the scenarios that we are going to automate. Okay. So for that, let's go back to test project. So let me create a new folder. Oh, I already created a new folder called YouTube demo API. Okay. So I would suggest you guys to basically visit my previous videos to create folders and projects and how can you create test, right? All these things I have already explained in my previous 7 YouTube videos. Please do visit that, okay, before you proceed with this. So now let's create a new test, okay? And here select web. I want to select web here and name this as sample API test. Okay, click on next, and I want to add, I think I already have application. Let's see. So this is our application, rest request rest.in, right? Okay, so that I already have actually API test where I have already stored that URL. Okay, this is the URL. Okay, and then click on next and click record. So as soon as you click record, it's gonna open that URL. Okay, start recording. So why I'm adding URL, just for it's easy for us to understand what we are automating. Okay, so in today's session, this is what I'm going to cover. So in the upcoming session, I'm going to enhance it, the concepts again. I'm going to enhance the concepts. I'm going to teach you a little advanced concepts. Okay, so whenever you started the recording, immediately it's going to start the URL and it opens the URL. Okay, so what is our first test that you want to automate? Okay, we want to automate the first request where we'll be getting all the users as a response, right? Okay, let me show you that. Okay, so it's basically loading. Just give a minute. Okay, let me pause the recording and show you. Okay, so here my first request is this. Okay, so let's add a new step manually. Add step manually. What are we doing here? We are doing get function, right? So basically, before you add this step manually, let's go back to test project. Okay, what is our prerequisite? Go to add-ons and search for RESTful. Just search for RESTful. Here, as soon as you search for RESTful, you will get an add-on called RESTful API client. And then you will have install button here. Because I already installed, it's showing me installed. If you're not installed, it's going to show you install. Just click on install button. It will take a minute to install this add-on. Okay, that's our prerequisite. Okay, so now let's go back to our test again. Okay, so because I already added that add-on, so now click on add step manually. Here you just type http get because I have installed that add-on, I will get this action, HTTP GET request. Okay, click on this. So as soon as you click on here, it will ask you to provide the URI. Okay, what is my URL? Rest in rest request rest.in slash what is my source. This is my source for to get all the list of users, right? Just enter that API slash users page equal to 2. Okay, this is my URL. And now JSON path. So for now, leave about the JSON path. Okay, what is my expected status? My expected status is 200, correct? So let's enter expected status as 200, which is response code. Okay, now let's capture the entire response. Okay, so how can you capture the entire response? Go to your server response body. Okay, now select a parameter. Now I want to add a new parameter here. What is the parameter I want to add? Server response. Okay, so basically what I am doing, I'm adding a parameter so that I can capture the response. Okay, select this server response. Okay, so now what I am doing, entire server response, basically this entire response, the whatever the response we are seeing here is going to store in a parameter called server response. Okay, let's save this step. Now let's execute and see what happens. Okay, let's execute this. So it's executed successfully, and see the details here. If you see the details, the response code is 200, which is correct. And what is my response body? This entire server response is this. So that means I have stored the entire server response to the parameter successfully, right? That is done. Now, as I told you, from this entire response, I have to extract the details of my first user only, correct? For that, you need to add another step manually. Type extract JSON path, extract JSON. So if you see here, yeah, extract multiple JSON paths. So because this is also a separate add-on. So as soon as you search in the action, you might not have a option to add because you need to install. So you will have a button called install. So you need to install this JSON operation. Okay, add-on. This is add-on. So as soon as you click on install, you should be able to use this function. Okay, so select that function. Now I want to capture. So what is my this entire JSON value that I want to use to extract multiple JSON paths? So you need to provide the entire response, whatever we captured in our first step. Okay, just go here. Okay, so here earlier we already captured in our first step entire response. So I want to use this parameter here. Okay, server response. Take the server response. Now what are all the JSON paths? So you can basically specify multiple JSON paths in different lines. Okay, my first JSON path is I want to extract first name and last name. Okay, so to extract, so basically how to extract the first name last name, probably you can refer. So anytime you extract, or even anytime you specify a particular child element, so you need to start with dollar. Okay, dollar dot. So basically let me take directly all these things here. Okay, so if you see here, let me copy all these things. Okay, what I'm doing, I'm capturing. So if you see here, what I'm doing, let me save this and explain you. Okay, why I have entered like this. Okay, if you go here, my response, the response is stored in a root element called data. Under root element data, so basically first root element is page. Okay, I'll be using dot, and then second root element is data. Under data, what is next one? I want to capture first name as a child element, which is Michael. I want to capture last name, and I want to capture ID. And hence, that's why if you see here, dollar dot, this represents your page, first root element, and the second root element data, because this entire users details are reside under data. So that's why I'm entering data. And what is my first element? Because here every element starts with 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Every user within the data, this is my first 0 element, this is my 1 sub element, 2, 3. So now I want my first one, which is 0. Under data, I want first element. What I want? I want first name. That's why I'm specifying 0 dot first name. In the same way, dollar dot data 0 and last element, dollar dot data 0 and ID. Okay. So now I'm capturing all these JSON paths. I'm extracting basically. Once I extract, I want to store them in parameters. What is my output? So, okay, first path result 1. What in my first path is first name, correct? So let's create first parameter. Add first name, save this, select it. So that means first name is gonna, my first path is gonna store in this parameter. What is my second one? Second one is last name. Add another parameter, last name. That means my second path, whatever I'm extracting, is going to store here. Second path is last name. Third path is ID. So just add a third one, right? Add another parameter called ID. Save this. So that my third path is going to store here. Done. I think that's it. And then save the step. So that means first I'm getting entire response. From entire response, I'm just extracting this first element, sub element, right? Child element. I'm extracting my first record, and I'm storing my first name, last name, and ID in different parameters. Right. Now, what is my next test case? My next test case is to execute a get operation. Okay. This is my get operation. But what user I want to get? I want to get a first user from the entire response. What is my first user? Here is my first user, right? So let's add another action here. Okay. Add step manually. Now I have to use get, right? HTTP get request. Here, what is my URL now for the single user? To get the single user, this is my URL. Okay, copy this, and then this is your source, API slash users slash here ID. So I don't want to use the ID called to, but I want to use the ID that I have stored earlier. Where here, if you see, okay, we have not executed this, right? We already executed it. Let's see the extract JSON paths successfully executes or not. Okay, let me extract this. Okay, let me execute this. When I execute this, it should extract the response and store first name, last name, and ID. So if you see here, I can see that now it is getting exactly Michael Lawson and your ID as 7. If you see here, first name is Michael, last name is Lawson, and your ID is 7. Correct? It's got it. Now, what we are doing here, we are actually executing single user test case, right? But now here I want to pass, instead of 2, I want to pass the ID that I have captured from this step. I want to capture the ID that I am storing here, right? I want to use that. So for that, go here. Now modify your URL here. Okay, so the URL is API underscores API slash user slash this one, right? The 2. Instead of 2, I want to pass my ID that I captured in my previous step. So for that, use parameter and go down and select ID. Okay, use parameter, select ID. That's it. So I'm using ID here instead of hard coding my user which I want. And here, see here, now when I get the response, so let me store the response as it is, server response here. Okay, what is my server response? Just store as it is. Let's use the same server response. I want to override the server response of my previous test case. Okay, just use the server response, or let me create a new one. Unnecessary confusion. Okay, let's create single user response, right? Single user response. Save this, select it. Okay, response I'm storing here and save the step. Now let's execute this step now. Execute. So now it should use the ID from the previous, which is 7. My previous ID is, let me show you the previous test case ID. What I got here is, however, on this, if you see, I can see the ID is stored as 7 here, and my last name is stored as Lawson. My first name is stored as Michael. Okay, so it's what it executed. Let's see. If you see here, I got, see, ID 7. I got the response ID 7 response. I got first name Michael and last name Lawson. I want to validate the response now. Within the response, does the response contains first name, which I got from my previous test case where I have stored here, right? So let me add another step here. Okay, let's go back here again. What is the response you got? Let's see. This entire response body I got the response of only one user. Now I want to extract first name and last name from this response. Add another step manually. Same thing, extract multiple JSON paths, right? Select that. Here, what is my JSON input here? The latest response that I captured, which is single user response. Okay. And what are all the JSON paths I want to capture? I want to capture my simple first name and last name. Okay, because currently I have only one set of data, right? Only one set of data. That's it. So I need not to use 0, 1, 2, 3 because I have only one set of data. That's why I'm going to use star dollar dot dot first name, dollar dot dot last name, right? That's it. Now here I want to add a validation here. What is my first validation? So instead of storing this first name last name, I want to add a validation. Whatever the first name and last name I captured from the single user response, is it contains my first name that I have captured in my previous step. Okay, I'm asking that does contain the value that is stored in my parameter which I captured earlier, first name. So let's add another one. Another one is, does this second JSON path contains, let's add another one, does that contains last name? So basically, instead of storing my JSON, first JSON path and second JSON path in the variable, I'm actually adding a validation point here. Does the first JSON path, whatever I'm capturing, is equal to the first name that I captured in my previous step, right? In the same way, last name in the I captured in previous step. Okay, just save this. If you see here, I've already captured my first name here in my previous step. First name showing as Michael, second name showing as Lawson, right? So now let's see, execute this and see what happens. So it's failed. What is the failure? Let's see. It says result 1 Oh, first name, it's not capturing first name. Let's close this again. Okay, what is the problem? Let's see. Open this. I want to type this again. Okay, dollar dot dot first name, because there is a problem in copy and pasting. Dollar dot dot last name. Save this. Now execute this again. Now it's pass. If you see here, Michael Lawson. That means let's execute. Let's execute this entire test cases together. Okay, let's run from here. Okay, what I'm doing, I'm getting all user details here, and I'm capturing my first user details from the response, and I'm storing ID, first name, last name in parameters. And in the second test case, where I'm actually requesting for only one user details, where I'm using the ID from my previous test case, and I'm getting the response, entire response of that user, and I'm actually capturing only first name and last name from the response, and I'm validating if the first name and last name or whatever I got from this request is equal to the first name last name I captured from my previous request. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, let's execute all together. Run from here. So it's going to open the URL, and then it start executing my first get function. If you see here, get, and then it is extracting ID, first name, last name, and then it is getting my second single username. So everything is passed. Pass, result is pass. I got the single user details, and it contains the previous first name and last name I captured in my previous use case, right? So hope you all understand the concept. It's really very important to capture the JSON paths and multiple JSON paths, so that you can validate n number of elements or child elements from your responses. Okay, and so in my next session, I'm gonna explain you, I'm gonna combine both web application and your API automation. Basically, get information from the API request by sending an API request, and then whatever the response you got, right, from the API request, capture some of the details from your response and pass those details to your web application. So it's very important. I'm going to explain you that. So how can we perform this? Okay, so I'm going to explain you. Okay, hope you all understand the very important concepts of API. If you have any comments, just provide your comments in the comment box. I'm going to respond to your queries. Okay, please do subscribe to the channel, click on bell icon. You'll receive more notifications whenever I publish more videos on these concepts. Thank you.